Hey guys, Tammy here. And I want to talk about the phrase, well, that doesn't happen at my house. This is one of the most commonly reported phrases from the narcissist. This is a phrase that my clients regurgitate to me a lot when they try to bring up some issue about the children that they're feeling like needs to be dealt with. And the other person just kind of says, well, doesn't happen at my house. In other words, well, that's your problem. Is that true? Does it not happen at their house? And if it doesn't, why doesn't it? How do you know? And how do you handle it? If you like this content, don't forget to hit like on the video. Also subscribe to the channel so that you get notified as new videos are released. And also, as always, feel free to share this on social media. There are a lot of people looking for help with this type of issue. I've talked to a few people this week, and I had somebody say to me, I find a lot of people that do, divorce coaching. I don't find as many people that do custody coaching specifically, which is kind of what I am more specialized in. And they said, but most of those people just do it from a life coaching or therapeutic type perspective. They don't necessarily bring the legal aspect and understanding kind of the court viewpoint of it in the context of all that. So I do think it's kind of a really unique information that is needed by people going through this. So like I said, please feel free to share. When someone tells you that it doesn't happen at your house, let's think about this. First of all, it's dismissive of your feelings, right? Which shouldn't really come as a surprise to us because this is what the narcissistic person has done our entire relationship with them, be dismissive of our feelings. So why would this be any different? And this is the reason that I don't really engage in, discussions about issues with the children. Usually this kind of thing comes from one of the parents saying, well, the child's having a lot of tantrums and acting out and biting at my house. I'm not really sure what to do about it. Are you experiencing this at your house? And the person's like, no, that doesn't happen at my house. So here's the thing. It's usually the reasoning is a few different things. One, most commonly, it's that the child doesn't act out in front of the narcissist, right? And I've done videos about this in the past where it's like you have to understand the child is surviving when they're there. They're doing whatever they have to do to get through it, right? You were in a relationship with this person. You know how long you lived in survival mode. And now you've got your child with way less emotional maturity than you trying to navigate this situation. And a lot of times they're fearful of the narcissistic parent. And they may not necessarily be fearful in a physical sense, like they're afraid of being hurt physically or hit or beaten or anything. A lot of times it's emotional. It's like, well, if I act that way, the other parent withdraws their love. However, that parent shows their unhappiness with the child's behavior. It's emotionally abusive in a lot of situations. And so the child is doing what they can to try not to have that happen, right? They're essentially walking on eggshells is what your child's doing when they're in that world. And that almost makes the backlash of it worse for you because then they come back home and then you are the safe space. You are the person that's validating. You are the person that is allowing them to express their feelings. And so what happens? You're the one that gets all the tantrums and the misbehavior and this and that. The bedwetting, whatever the symptom is that you're experiencing, that's why it sometimes isn't happening at the narcissist's house because the child doesn't feel safe enough to express themselves emotionally in that way. Here's the other thing I'll tell you. Sometimes it actually is happening in their world. They just won't admit it because if they don't admit it and they say it's just you, then they think that that's accomplishing making you look like a bad parent. And they think that that's going to give them the upper hand in the court situation. And so that's the other reason that they will sometimes say that it's not happening on their end. Either it it is happening and they're lying about it, or it's not happening and the reason is because the child doesn't feel safe enough in that world to react in that way. Now, look, on these kinds of issues, when you're dealing with really behavioral stuff with the children, the best thing I can tell you is the kids need to be in therapy. They just do. When you have a child that's struggling in these ways, they need to be in therapy. That's really the only place that they can feel empowered and gain the tools and techniques to be able to deal with the other parent. Now, you can model it, you can model a lot of things because a lot of the things that they're going to be taught in therapy are a lot of the things that I teach my clients in how to deal, the techniques for actually dealing with the situation of not engaging and not arguing back and not getting emotional and taking time to ground yourself and, kind of take a time out for yourself when you need it and whatever. All the different techniques that we use, you can model for your child that that's how you're going to deal with their parent, that you're always, going to be kind, that you're not going to let the parent see you get shook, that you're not going to, you can model that. But it's really difficult to sit down and have a conversation with your child about different coping techniques or being able to express themselves to that parent without seeming like you're putting the child in the middle from the court's perspective. It's just really tough to do because any conversation that you're having like that, where you're acknowledging the issues with the other parent, it can smack of the child being coached. So it's not really something that you can do yourself. You really need to involve a therapist or a third party, a third party expert, typically a therapist. And I know sometimes like the other parent won't agree, right? Like a lot of times narcissists don't want the kid in therapy because they don't want to be found out. And maybe it's severe enough that you need to go back into court and ask for that order. In most states, it's a pretty easy order to get. I know in some states they require a little more justification. I think New York's a little harsher on it. There's a couple places that are a little more rigid about it. But in California, I'll tell you, like getting an order for therapy, one of the simplest orders to get because court's like, therapy, what can therapy hurt? Sure, everybody gets therapy. So having that third party expert involved is real important. And I would, again, if it's severe enough, maybe you want to go into court and ask for it, or at least kind of put it on your list for, okay, if we end up going back for some other reason, I want to make sure I include this issue. The other thing that I tell people to do sometimes, if you have a kid that's of school age and the other parent won't let a therapist get involved, sometimes just sort of subtly suggesting to the child, you sound really frustrated. Like if they're complaining about the other parent or when that opportunity comes up, I wouldn't sit down and like have this very pointed discussion. Again, that makes it seem like you have an agenda. But when it comes up for the child and they're upset about something or whatever, really, whether it's related to the other parent or not, you could say, hey, it seems like you're really struggling. Maybe you should talk to the school counselor about that. A lot of times they have some different ideas that might be helpful to you, or if your child's having behavioral issues at school and the other parent won't won't agree to them to go to therapy. That's a great way to deal with it and say, hey, it seems like you're really struggling at school. You feel frustrated, you're arguing with your teacher, whatever the issue is, you're not getting your homework done. Maybe you should go and see your school counselor. Maybe they have some ideas on what might be helpful to you. And you don't want to be trying to plant specific seeds. You just want to give them the idea. And you might have to repeat that several times, but usually eventually children will put it all together and they'll go and see the school counselor. I've had that happen. And I've had school counselors come back and send the parents a note and say, your child's really struggling. It might be helpful to get the child into therapy. Well, then if the person still won't agree, and a lot of times they will at that point, because then they got to face the other party that's telling them that's not you. But it also then gives you something to where you could go into court and say, look, school's recommending that the child be put in therapy. The other parent won't agree. I don't know what else to do, Your Honor. I need an order from the court. That's kind of how I deal with those things. But in the interim, you do need to be modeling the best techniques that you possibly can for your child because they're going to learn from what you do, not from what you say. They're going to learn from your example much more than they're going to learn from your words, okay? So if you'd like to learn how to really model great techniques for them and to be a great example of how to move through dealing with somebody that is a high conflict personality like this, you can go to divorceuniversityonline.com/VIP-coaching. There's information on that page. You can learn about my group coaching programs. And if you feel like you want a premium level of service and you need that type of support, you also have the option on that page to book a one-on-one call so you can learn more about my services in that area. Okay. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you guys next week.